So, welcome back to Writing with Witches episode. We'll call it one because now we're actually talking about writing this time.
Yep.
So, my name is Leona Urbansky. I am a not yet published author. I'm working on that. And my co host is,
I am Nicole Autumn, and I currently have 3 books published, indie published.
which
Had to
is
clarify that.
still published.
It is
It is
published,
still published.
but I wanted to clarify it's indie published and not traditionally published. So,
All right, well, that's
yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
So, in case you haven't listened to our podcast before, real quick, what we do is we talk about writing and we talk about witchcraft. Mostly writing, some witchcraft thrown in.
Yes. Some witchy tips sprinkled in between.
Yes. Another thing to talk about is how our craft has influenced or made its way into our writing. Um, so if you're going to read one of our books, you can kind of see, oh, hey, that's where that came from.
100%. Yes.
So, first
So,
off,
oh, go ahead.
book news.
Book news. Yes. So, this month I have challenged myself because I have about 47,000 words left in my make believe number that I made up for what I want to have for this book. And I am pushing to try and get it finished by the end of the month because I have been working on this for, oh gosh, I don't know, over a year at this point, and I'm still in the rough draft phase. So I am trying to push myself to get it done as a birthday huzzah to me since it's my birthday month.
You can do it. I believe in you.
I believe I can do it. I just have to stay focused, which is hard cuz all the kids are on break, but on the bright side because they're on break, I can now have the late night writing sessions without children and having to worry about waking up at 7 a.m. in the process.
Literally burning the midnight oil.
Quite literally. Yes.
So, just random question now that you mentioned it. How many words were the past few books? Like, are you trying to make
Um
it a comparable number here?
so all the first two, so Unbound and Unleashed, were roughly around 100,000 words, 110,000. This one, I'm kind of, because I'm trying to tie up all of the loose ends and not make the ending feel rushed, I'm giving myself 125,000 words before edits, um, give or take. So that's kind of where I'm sitting. I want it to be a little bit thicker because it is the last book. There's a lot of things to cover, but I'm
Yeah.
hoping that'll be the sweet spot where it's not too long, but it's, it doesn't feel rushed like the ending was rushed. So any book news for you though?
I am still doing revisions on Fire Magic, and it has been one of the ones getting put to the back burner a little bit because I just started a new job. Um, and I am still doing my graduate courses.
Ooh, rough.
So priorities are getting rearranged with the new job and figuring that stuff out. And then now we're doing a podcast. So
So it's just another piece taken from your pie.
exactly. So no, but I will get to it. I am holding. You guys are not the only one that has heard that I want to get this done by published by October. I have another friend that is very adamant that I get this published in October because she's like, I'm going to read the final version in October, right? Yes, yes, you are.
Right?
So, yeah, exactly that tone. Precisely.
Nice.
So, yes, I will be, I'm going to be doing my best to get on that the rest of June into July. And I really want to have all the final edits done by the end of July, so that I have August and September to run the Kickstarter because I also need to plan that.
That does take a lot of planning.
Yes, it does. Luckily, I have some resources that I am fully intending to take advantage of that have done Kickstarters in the past that I know personally, so I can like go in and
Pick their brain.
brains,
Nice.
pick the brain, to get help. And on top of that, while it wasn't a fiction book, it was an art book. It was still a book, so they know about like going to the printers and I think mine might be a little easier because I am planning on using a print on demand
Yeah.
versus printing them all ahead of time and sending them out that way. So like I'll have
Yeah.
the pre-orders be going through whatever printing company I decide to use
That makes
versus
sense.
me having to pull them, and then if I do like signed any kind of signatures, I'd probably like do a book plate versus having to ship all the books to me and then ship them all out again.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
I follow an author recently that just put up her, she's a serial author, was on Kindle Vella for a while before Kindle Vella went away on us. And
Okay.
she was, she put out a collector's edition of the first two seasons of one of her stories. And someone was like, "Are you going to do signatures?" And she's like, "My family has convinced me for my sanity to not do signatures, and it said ship directly from the printer."
Yeah. I mean, that could be. I mean, that's why I think it was like Brandon Sanderson who mentioned having a very short signature for those purposes. So signing books was really fast and you're not taking all this time signing each and every book because that could be a lot. It's stressful to sign all those
Yeah,
books. Plus the
yeah.
hand
I
cramps. My
I follow
God.
a couple. Yeah, right. I follow a couple of authors. Kelsey and Peaches May just published her Voice of the Ocean. This is gonna kind of tell you guys how early we're recording these. And was following her, and she actually did a video on how many books that she was signing at these bookstores, and she was getting special pens to make sure that they would last, and
Yeah.
all of this other stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'll sign like a poster or a book plate. How about that?
Yeah. I didn't even think about having special pens to make sure that they didn't dry out on you. That's crazy. They signed that many? Jeez.
She has already large social media following, so she got quite a
Yeah.
few pre-orders, which is legit. I'm not gonna lie, I did buy the book. I have not read it yet. It's on the growing stack. uh
The growing physical TBR.
yes, yes. So anyway, all of that to say, I'm editing.
Yes. Well,
So
that's good though. Editing is a long process. And that's my next step after getting this finished. The long haul is the editing. And I typically go through multiple rounds, not just once. It's like four,
oh,
five
you should.
rounds.
And I think that's it's doing enough rounds that you feel like it's good enough without doing so many rounds that you get so sick of it, and you're just you can't fall into the trap of it's never good enough, you
Yeah.
know.
Or that trap of, well, if I just tweak one more thing, if I just fix this or that, or what if this was different? It's the what ifs that can really halt the progress of actually getting things
Yeah,
finished. Because I know there's people that are like, I've been working on this single novel for 10 plus years. I'm like, how? How do you keep working on something? Well, no. There's a difference between writing it, editing it, and like it's percolated in your head for 10 years, but someone that's actively writing and editing on something for 10 years. I'm like, that's a long time. And I feel like at
that's
what
fair.
point do you call it done? Like 10 years is a long time. That's
Yeah.
that's just my brain just can't comprehend that type of patience because I am very impatient when it comes to getting books especially at that last stage of editing and getting it ready to get published. Sometimes I jump the gun. I know that.
No, I disagree. I think they were fine.
Okay. Well, that's nice to know.
And
So what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, to be fair, this book would have been considered done, except as you know, there have been some major revisions thanks to writing the second book that need to have those plot holes patched up.
And that happens. That's fair. Like sometimes writing the second book and you're just like, oh, dang, didn't see that coming. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's fair. Um, so did we say that this was our brainstorming episode?
No, I think we were getting through the book
Book
news, and then
news.
I was planning on this is episode one of our book writing arc.
Yes.
So you're gonna see these episodes every other episode. We will continue on our book writing journey. So to me, the very start of writing a book is getting the idea. And so we're going to talk about brainstorming. If you don't already have an idea, then you want to get one. This is what you got to do.
Yeah. So for me, like I said in the last episode, that music tends to be a huge spark of inspiration for me. And sometimes it is just one lyric where, for example, in this episode, there is a fight scene that takes place. And the song that came on was talking about a cage fight. And I was like, a cage fight? And then my brain just took off from there. And some of my characters end up in a cage fight, essentially, gladiator style. So, and that's sometimes all it takes is just that one spark of inspiration. And then there's been times where it is a subject that I have liked. I've always been fond of vampires. I kind of liked it before it was popular, and I was called the weird kid because who reads about vampires while they're reading Chicken Noodle Soup for the Soul? Nothing wrong with that. But that's what they were reading, and I'm over here, reading Twilight before it got popular. And they were like, who's that weirdo reading that? So I've even drafted up a few chapters of a story that takes place of a vampire in modern day society, and it follows her, and she gets stopped by a random barista that just starts info dumping and trauma dumping about her boyfriend, and she's like, what the hell is going on, lady? I don't know you. So, and it could just that subject of, you know what, maybe I do want something about a vampire in modern day. So it comes in all different fonts, if you will.
All different fonts. I like that.
Yes.
I like that. Bold, italic, underline. There we go. Or we
Yep.
could go with the classic Times New Roman Calibri script.
Yep.
Vampires would be script.
Vampire, definitely script. One of those really fancy scrolly ones.
Yeah, we got the whole calligraphy going on.
Yeah. So which have helped you find inspiration?
I tend to go down one of three paths. The flash of inspiration definitely has motivated more than one story. Seeing just the black tiger picture, it was basically an inverted white tiger, black with silver stripes. I was like, ooh, that's pretty. What
Yeah.
can I make a story out of with that? Um, Interested in a subject, or in this case, it wasn't even so much interested in a subject as I had info dumped so hard due to cringe research on a subject. I had read a lot of military sniper autobiographies
Okay.
because I wanted to understand that mindset for my character, because that's the closest thing I could think of um, get the similar mindset. And in that process, I got a bunch of info dump on rifles
Oh,
and
that's
sniper
useful.
rifles specifically. So then I like went sideways with it and went to Civil War era sniper rifles, and
Oh,
that
wow. Yeah.
grew a story out of it.
I feel like we should probably
So
have an episode where we just talk about all of the random rabbit holes that we have gone down as authors. Because I have
that's part of the
also
fun.
gone. It is. And it's probably why we're also on watch lists. Because I've also had to
The,
do,
the cool searches.
yes, I have also had to do research on guns, and one of my characters were ex military. And I'm like, what guns do they use in the military? My husband's military, and I still don't know. So I'm like having to Google, and I'm like, what's the current ones that they're using? Wait, what ones would they be using 10 years ago? Um, which one would they use if they were special ops? And it was just down a rabbit hole I went.
So yeah, no, Google internet searches, yes. That,
Yeah.
like I have had to look up how what does a brand look like on human skin?
Ooh.
That was a fun one.
Oh, I'm sure that probably triggered some red flags somewhere on an FBI server.
Or what poundage of a bow is enough to pierce human skull?
Oh, wow. You're like, I want the exact weight, please. Or, I mean, I've also looked up, like, how wide is the blast radius of an IED going off? And I'm like, oh, 30 feet. You'll die,
I can work with
for
that.
sure. And 50 feet, you might live. So, yeah, the Google searches.
And it's funny though, because those Google searches are also kind of the things that will jumpstart another story.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like I the with the rifle thing, I went on the Civil War era rifles because one of the autobiographies I read, not wrote, once I read was compilation of Civil War era journals and letters of one of their sniper units.
Oh, that's
And I was like,
interesting.
this is cool.
Yeah.
And like they were using some of the first sniper rifles. And then, of course, I had to go turn it fantasy and set it in like a medieval era because that's fun and you have to have swords still, even if you have sniper rifles. So
That's fair. I mean, is there? I mean, I've seen in my book there's arrows and bows. So, meanwhile, the people that I'm writing about, they're like over here with guns and stuff, and it's like that seems a little lopsided. But I mean, they're demons, so they have demon powers. So
that is
we
fair.
kind of need the guns,
A little bit, a little bit.
just a
Um,
smidgen.
just a little smidgen.
Yep.
Kind of a third piece of inspiration I've gotten has been story prompts.
Okay.
I haven't used any for the larger novels just because those tend to come from a deeper well, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
between the inspiration and the info dumping of subjects. But short stories definitely had some story prompts, creative writing class, and then
Yeah.
some of those would grow into a longer, beyond just the journal entry kind of thing. And then sometimes I took those story prompts and turned them on their head entirely. I remember in creative writing class, um, we all wrote a story and we handed it to someone else, and they
Mm-hmm.
wrote it from a different point of view. Me being the morbid little emo girl that I was, um, got handed a story about a college party where the story that was written was like happy go lucky and they all left and my story ended with some girl laying on the ground asphyxiating on her own vomit.
Oh, not the turn I thought it was going to be. I straight went horror movie. So that says what
Nope.
where mine went. It was like you're like someone's dying on the floor from vomit, and I'm like everyone's getting murdered.
Oh no, she
Slasher
was like
film.
literally watched them all walk away out the front door of the frat house while she laid on the floor, suffocating on her own vomit.
Oh god.
And I handed it back to the girl, and she's like, "What the?"
What the fuck is wrong with you? This was so
Yes.
dark.
She's like,
Well,
"That
it's
was a
nice to
happy story."
know. It's nice to know we're in good company because we both went to dying. So,
Yeah, she died. Well, because yeah, then the story I had written was basically about like fall and death and decay, and she turned it into like, oh, happy crisp fall day, and I'm like, that's not
apple
where I'm
pies
going.
and pumpkin bread.
Exactly right. I was like,
Oh gosh.
you have not to stereotype. I have friends who are sorority sisters. I am good friends with them, but I was like, you have obviously been to more frat house parties than I have. So I'm just
Oh god.
imagining the worst possible. Okay, it's not the worst possible outcome. One of the worst possible
One of a
outcomes.
bad situation, yeah, for sure. I don't think I've ever actually
Anyway,
used story prompts just to get us back on track. Um I know in our writing group during Nano, I can't remember exactly who it was, where they would give us occasionally, I think it was like during Nano when we would do the write-offs. Um she would roll a dice and be like, you have to incorporate um the next sprint you have to do something about, I think at one point it was like a body part. And it ended up being a hand.
oh god,
And I was like, how the hell am I going to do this? So it was literally like one of the characters were taking a shower and I talked about how the water would drip off his hand. And I was just like, huh, never thought of that before now and having to use a specific body part. But I mean, it gave me an inspiration. It actually ended up being a pretty good scene. And like in the way of like I guess the sensory thing, like the water dripping off his hand and tinking to the ground and like giving that visual imagery. I was like, huh, who would have thought? A dice roll. So, I mean, not necessarily
yeah,
a story prompt, but it was still a prompt as in to use something out of the ordinary that you weren't initially thinking of. So, I mean, there is that too.
no, that's for sure. And I
Um,
mean, I would encourage anyone to if you're feeling stuck. Um, I know a lot of people use that as a way of getting out of writer's block. Is just to grab a story prompt. You know, take a break from whatever main story they're feeling stuck on. Take a story prompt and just write. You know, you don't even have to write up a nice, polished, elaborate story. Just like a few paragraphs describing a scene, and who knows, maybe that will come to play later in a book, like you with your hand,
yeah,
or it might spawn a larger idea later on, or even just if you decide to do a short story and submit it somewhere, you know.
yeah. I definitely agree that that is something that can help with writer's block because sometimes there are definitely those times where you're sitting there and you go to open it up and to a blank page and it's nothing. So having that writer like just a prompt just to get the brain flowing is a good way to kind of beat that brain fatigue and writer's block. Because sometimes, man, those
Yeah,
blank pages. It's like you have all
they are
these thoughts in your
intimidating, all
head.
that white space.
Yeah, you have all those thoughts in your head, and then as soon as you sit in front of a blank page, you're just like, it's just gone, all of it.
Yeah, and then and then you get those rare moments where you get the flow and you're like, I can't quit, I can't quit, I can't. You end up till 3 in the morning writing.
Oh yes, I've had that too. So, in terms of the process of writing, do we look for an end goal or the a goal for a certain character? Um, I know for me, a lot of the times I don't have an end goal in the beginning. It isn't until probably halfway through that I can see where we're going. So now that it's like the third book in this series that I'm writing, um, I now know like, okay, this is how I want it to end. And I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of itching to get to that ending because it's gonna be so satisfying. But sometimes you don't really know where it's going, and you kind of just throw something until it sticks, I guess.
Just throw the spaghetti at the wall.
Exactly. 100%. That's exactly what I mean.
I probably do a little bit of both because it'll sometimes be I have these characters and I need to know where they're going. So, like in Fire Magic, I kind of had to know up front, was this whole thing going to be successful or not, because that kind of influenced how I wrote.
Yeah.
Or like if I didn't know if it was going to be successful, then I would have been going on to detours and paths that didn't need to happen or weren't going to make sense in the end.
Yeah.
And then other times it's like you said, you get halfway through the story before you figure out, like the ending of Silver Eyes. I didn't know that was going to happen until it happened.
You're like, wow, news to me.
Yeah, so that was actually one of the ones that was definitely a pantser story. I just wrote that as it came. But I think I think a happy medium is probably my favorite, is, getting that flash of inspiration, seeing those characters coming to you, but having like a distant light in the end of the tunnel.
A vague idea of what may happen.
Yeah, so you're like, it's like it's like seeing the old maps on like movies and stuff where you got to see their little path.
Yeah.
And they could have taken all these different paths, but they're going to end up here. And how they
Mm-hmm.
get there could be a family circus or it could be a straight line, but that's where they needed to end up.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have that pin in the wall, or the spaghetti on the wall, so to speak, to
Yeah.
see where you're going.
And then, there are on people on the other hand where they plan out everything from start to finish before they even start writing. It's very
Yeah.
methodical and it's a process and they know everything that's going to happen. So there's definitely many ways to get to the end. And some people know exactly how they want it to end and others just don't. It's like, well, I'm on this
Yeah,
ride
I
too.
I attempted that, and I actually recently went back and looked at the outline I made up for the second book in the series, and I somehow went off course about halfway through because, like, I was doing line outs, cross outs as I went to check off each part that I'd gotten off, and about halfway through, it's just nothing is crossed off, and it
You're
never
like,
will be.
oh, there was a major detour here.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and I
So yeah,
think,
I think any of those ways are good. It's what works for you as an author, really.
yeah,
And I know that's vague advice, but those are some options to explore.
yeah. I know for me, when it comes to planning and just how we get from point A to point B, it's very, I guess, ambiguous. It just goes. And then there's times where I make full, like, timelines. I don't know if you can see them, but there's like timelines of these two characters because they're in different times, if that makes sense, and they're overlapping to an extent. So I'm like, well, how is his timeline lining up with her timeline and do they meet, and because there's like a 30-year difference. I know that sounds very vague, and what does she mean?
I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, so that is the Casper inspired one.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, so there's
I'm already enjoying that one, so
yeah, but I haven't worked on it. And then
I mean, priorities.
I found out, I think it was last month, two of the other authors that I have followed, they're also working on Casper inspired novels. I'm like, God damn it. I thought I was going to be the first. But in a way, it kind of works, because if someone likes one of theirs, it's like, hey, if you're also interested in that same topic, mine's a little different if you really want to say the same thing or similar.
Well, it's like someone I saw something the other day and it was like just write it because how many coffee shop AU's fan fictions are there of the same two characters, but someone that loves those characters is still going to go read every single one of them just to see your interpretation of it.
True. That is very, very true. Everyone's personal style reflects in their writing and how their characters interact and what they do and say. Because let me tell you, sometimes people say the most off the wall shit I've ever read in my life. And I'm like, my character would never. Would never. And then I'm sitting here
See,
like,
no,
I
no,
want a
you better
character
finish
like
that.
that. Oh, I am for sure going to finish it, but I am bound and determined to get this one done. So I can just say that that is completed now. And all the other ones that I've been working on are more like standalones. So standalones in the same world.
That's fair.
So, yeah. Anything else you would like to touch on that subject before we move on?
Am I that predictable?
I'm just, I saw your eyes go like, what else can I think to say on that?
No, I think I've drained that well for the moment.
Okay. So next up would be our witchy tip and talking about modern holidays. And in that turn, also pagan holidays, because modern holidays, most people will think Halloween, Christmas, Easter, where pagan holidays were stolen. No. So a lot of the holidays that most people celebrate were still celebrated by the pagans, and how we celebrate them.
And one of the things that I think we both wanted to bring into this one is to remind ourselves that our time and schedule and calendar is ruled by a very different society than when these holidays were originally celebrated. So I think our tip really is, if you can't celebrate at midnight on the equinox, it's okay.
Yes, it is not a rigid schedule. I mean, back then they were looking towards the seasons and the signs of nature that time is passing, right? We have the daffodils, we know that pop up first in spring, or robins. If they're in your area, you're like, oh, I've seen robins, I know spring is on its way. Or when the corn starts to turn brown, that's when the autumn equinox is. So it's very seasonally based, and depending on where you're at, that could change. You know, things that are blooming in California aren't going to be blooming the same way in North Dakota. You know, generally in the same thing, but it's just an example that time moves differently, and sometimes celebrating on the day is not necessarily 100% needed.
And it's not always feasible. I mean, sometimes these days will fall in the middle of a work week, and I'm going to address specifically, since we are both in the United States, in our society, it's harder to take time off in the middle of the week for that kind of holiday because it's still very
It's
Christian
not
dominated and
nationally,
people aren't always.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not a
it's not
national
nationally
holiday. Yeah,
recognized. Yeah.
yeah.
And
You can
there are
take a
some
break.
places, that you still have to be careful with what you practice and how you practice and if you're open or not and if you're in a safe place to do so. And that all comes into account when practicing and celebrating the holidays.
Yeah, exactly. It's as we said on the last episode with the candles, it's really about the intent. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're whoever you're working with, it's not like they don't know that society's changed,
Yeah,
you know?
they're aware.
And we're not even talking like not even necessarily in any deities you might be working with, but just the elements. I mean, can you say that the elements don't know that the times have changed with one of the way of being treated? But anyway,
That's a whole other
I
subject.
mean this yeah, it's they're the epitome of change. So it's
Yeah.
just remembering to take that into account and to not give yourself too much grief. If you're able to take the time to celebrate on that holiday, more power to you. Just don't give shade to the people that can't, you know?
Yep. You all got to do what works for you. And that's the
Yeah.
whole point of witchcraft to begin with, is doing what feels right to you at the end of the day.
Something that I harp on a lot as a practicing druid is there is no history for the druids. It was all burned and torn down, and the people were eliminated without having the chance to pass on that history. So
Yeah.
we've just had to reconstruct it the best that we can in today's society. And that's the same to me. I'm not saying witchcraft didn't experience the same thing. It definitely has,
Yeah.
but it has definitely had a less unbroken line. Like there have always been witches.
Yeah.
Um, Druids, not so much. So it's where was I going with this? It's
I don't
remembering that
know, but it's okay. Sometimes we go off on our little tangent and away we go.
I think I remember. It's remembering that what worked in the past may not work today.
That's
That's where I was
fair.
going with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and
I
that's to be said for, not just druids, but there's, I think, shamans are another one where there was a long line of shamans, then it's gotten lost. And I know that's definitely the case within like the Native Americans, right? They had shamans, and because of,
absolutely
you know, the white man coming in, they've lost a lot of that.
colonization.
That's the word I was looking for. I was like, what the hell is that word? Because of colonization, they've lost a lot of that. I mean, some of them don't even know their tribal languages anymore, and that's just sad. But
Yeah.
again,
Well, and so many of
off on
those
a tangent.
languages have just died. Yeah. Okay. I won't. That's a long
No,
tangent for me. I'll stop.
yeah, we will keep on going if we are given the opportunity. Um, so finding our settings in our books,
Okay, we're
how
moving
we
on. Got it.
yes, I'm like, if we keep going, we'll sit here forever on this subject because I know I can go on and on. Finding our setting. um, how do you determine your settings?
I mean, my default is fantasy, and specifically high fantasy. I literally had a creative writing professor tell me, Leona, why can't you just write something in every day? And I said, why?
That's
I don't
boring.
wanna. What's the fun in that? So, that being said, there is whatever story you're intending. You can take any story and place it into any setting. There's no exclusive thing that is specific to any genre. Maybe what challenges they face, maybe what tools they use, maybe what money what's the saying, if it's fantasy it's gold coins, if it's sci-fi, it's currency
Yep.
or credits. It's credits.
Credits.
Um,
I mean, yeah, there are
you
definitely
know,
those standards you see along genres.
yes, but you can still take any story and put it into any setting. It what works for you. That said, it does matter as you go forward how you craft that story. So the setting does matter as you get into those more granular. I can describe one of my stories as a asked spy gets thrown into a situation where they have to become a spy again and end up uncovering a plot for someone to be assassinated and they have to rescue them.
Yeah.
That can be thrown into any setting. I
Yeah.
specifically threw it into a medieval fantasy setting because that's me. But
Yeah.
that can be any setting.
Yeah. And I think the difference will come down to just your world building, because you have your go-to as medieval fantasy. Mine, I tend to go low fantasy. I still like those fantastical elements of magic and even like portal worlds, as you say, and it's very common. They do use it. And I won't lie, I am a little lazy when it comes to world building. I sometimes don't have the brain capacity to be like, okay, I need to form this whole new world. It has its own laws, its own way of money and travel. And do they have electricity? Do they have cars? Do they have guns? Are we fighting with swords? Like, there's so much to account for when ultimately deciding where you want to have it. And where you choose to have it will dictate how much you have to put into your setting. Because we've all read
Yes.
books where they've created new worlds and sometimes it's not always thought out. And it's a little sloppy,
Yes.
and you're like, well, they should have thought some more on this. And
They should have done a little more Google searches.
yes, because I've read things where, there's a queen bowing to a knight or curtsying, and I'm like, time out. Um, no, that's not how that works. They don't bow or curtsy to anyone. Time out. So it's just little things like that that can give away whether or not you've built your world thoroughly, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And it's those little details that I don't know. I find myself when I am writing that even the most minor details can give away that I don't know what I'm talking about. And I don't want someone to find those. And that's where, you do dive in headfirst into all that research. Like for example, my vampire one that I started, I was like, well, I want her to be from Renaissance Italy, right? That time era. So I literally had to go and Google search popular names in Renaissance history, but they can't be too popular because, I can't use Medici's because, like, hello, that's like too common. Everyone knows that. But I also can't go and pick, a common popular name of Italy now. They're gonna be like, that name wasn't popular back then. So for all I know, there could be a freaking Renaissance history buff reading, and they're like, that's not right, So I know I try to do the thorough research, and sometimes that is entirely dependent on your setting, is how much research you'll do based on where you put them.
Right.
So,
Side note, you know what the most fun thing about building a world is?
what?
Figuring out what their profanities are.
Oh, yeah. Because sometimes they get creative. They,
Oh, it's
like, I
fun.
know with the Zodiac Academy, there is one that her name is Geraldine, and the things that she calls people are so wild. I'm like, where did you get that from? Like, Especially there's one because he has water elements. She's always calling him like a slippery eel or a floundering flounder. And I'm like, ma'am, where are you getting all these fish names from? Like these fish insults. I mean, that's good though. So it's definitely that it would be a fun aspect of figuring out what someone's profanity would be in a different world. I can see how that's fun.
And it is, it's like you said, though, it is those little things. Like, you don't realize it until you're going in and you're like, well, this character wouldn't say this because, and I'm showing my background a little bit here, I'm a linguist to a certain point. This word doesn't have the same meaning because it was came about specifically because of this point in history, and that's why this world has,
Yep.
you know.
I mean,
So then
the
I'm like, well,
word
we can't use that.
the word gay, for example, right? Like modern day
Uh,
gay does not equate the same thing as 100 years from now or 100 years ago. Like two entirely different meanings. Like one is happy, the other one's sexual orientation now. So it's like, okay. So that, yeah, even just word choice can be a big deal depending on your setting.
yeah.
You know, you're
So
not
all
going
that
to.
to say,
I was going to go on a tangent again.
no, no, that's fine. Go. I've already gone on like two or three at
I was
this
just going to
point.
say,
So
because, I mean, you can't say you're doing a historical fiction, you know, and you're in Victorian times. You're not going to be like, hey, yo, what's up, bro? Like, dead giveaway. No, that's not happening. So even just word choice is a huge deal, especially if you start going into like historical fiction or, you know, medieval fantasy. There's a little more give and take on that, but you know, your character's not going to be going around like you're woke, bro, or like sup, get me some daps. Like you're just like wrong. I don't think so. I don't think
I
that
agree there
fits.
entirely.
So it's just the little things. And I think that's also what makes the settings more realistic or believable is those little things that just the continuity of it. It all lines up and it makes it more believable so you can really get into the story because I'm sure we've all had those times where you're reading a book and you're in it and then something wild pops out and you're like, that's bizarre. That probably shouldn't be there. So
Yeah, it's the context clues that you pick up without even realizing it until something is out of place.
oh yeah. Yep. So that would be next would be the book reviews.
Yes. Do you want to go first this time?
Um, I can. I don't really have a book review per se, so mine is going to be what I am currently reading, which is Where Sleeping Girls Lie. I tried reading this before, but got really distracted because I started picking up my knitting again. Um, so I've started it. I have restarted it, and it is Where Sleeping Girls Lie by I don't want to say her name wrong. Let me double check. I believe, I don't know, I think it's African descent, like an African name, and I don't want to say it wrong. Because that just feels disrespectful. Let's see.
I'm not going to argue with that.
Do, 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 do. Okay, of course. It doesn't want to show me. Okay, so it's Faraday Abike Imade is the author. And I am probably 2 chapters in, so not much has happened, but it follows Sade, who is a new transfer student who was homeschooled, and she is now going to this very prestigious academy, and there seems to be some lurking darkness that we don't know about yet, and it has to do with swimming somehow. I don't know why, but she seems to have this bad flashback of when they talk about swimming and the new pool that they're putting in, and she was homeschooled because her dad didn't want her going to public school or private school or whatever. So That is what I am currently reading, and I will probably be reading more of it tonight when I go to bed. Because the last few nights I've just been so wiped. I haven't had a chance to read anything. I go to open it and I'm like, I am ready.
I
I'm
feel
like
you.
out before I even read a sentence. So, but that is what I am
I have been
reading.
like that the past few nights.
Yeah, it's been rough the last couple nights.
Okay.
So on
So
to
I
your book
actually
review.
remembered to grab it this time. And I don't know if it's going to mirror it. So if it does, I apologize. I read The Book of Elsewhere by Keanu Reeves and China Mia I'm going to say it wrong. Miaville, I think.
Okay,
Um, and this is the final installation in Keanu Reeves' graphic novel Berserker series.
that's nuts. I didn't even know he wrote books.
I'm not sure how much of the writing process was actually him and how much of him was telling the story and someone was writing it down for him. Not
Okay,
saying that Keanu Reeves can't write, I just personally don't know.
okay. I didn't know there was anything credited to his name at all. So that's a surprise. Like,
There is,
man is multi-talented for
and
sure.
if you like Keanu Reeves and you like graphic novels, it is definitely worth picking up. Boom Studios, I believe, is the one that published the Berserker series. And quick rundown on what's going on in this world. Is a character who looks very much like Keanu Reeves in like John Wick days, is a basically immortal named Unute who has blind berserk rages where he just literally kills anything and everything in front of him, friend, foe, lover, anything. So you just don't
Oh,
go near him
geez.
if you don't want to die, basically.
Oh,
Um, and they did a cool wrap up with it in the graphic novel. Then they had two more graphic novels called Bloodlines, where it was basically telling stories of him throughout his life. Like they had one set in the Old West, and they had
mm-hmm.
one set with can't think of his name, Genghis Khan.
Okay.
So this one specifically, what this focuses on, actually takes place before the original graphic novel, and he is integrated with this group of special forces, and they are doing all kinds of tests on him to try and recreate who he is so they can have, immortal soldiers because that's the US government we all know and love.
Oh,
And
yeah. The war
he's
machine
going
must
along
keep
with it.
going.
He's going along with it in the hopes that they'll figure out how to make him mortal. Because unfortunately, when I say immortal, what happens is he will literally get ripped piece to pieces.
Oh, geez.
All of that flesh forms an egg that he breaks out of reborn later.
That's an
He never
image.
stops feeling the pain. It is an image, and you get to see it in the graphic novels.
Ooh.
So yeah, um, he never stops feeling the pain. He never stops feeling the death, and he's just sick of it, understandably.
Oh, yeah.
So this actually takes place before all of that happens in the graphic novels, and so if you've read the graphic novels first, you're going to recognize some of these characters, but you find out that he's not the only one that is like this. And I'm going to show this picture again because it does become important. I didn't realize it until later, but it's a picture of a skull, and
Oh,
you can
yeah.
see the horns are growing
Mm-hmm.
back into the skull. um And another creature that is like Anute in that they're constantly reborn is this kind of deer pig species.
Okay.
And so part of the story is him finding this thing over and over throughout his life and them basically killing each other periodically and both coming
Oh,
back from the dead and figuring this shit out. And it's convoluted as heck. And I'm not gonna lie, it will be a lot easier if you read the graphic novels first. You can get into this without the graphic novels and understand it. It is an interesting setup because they'll have a couple of chapters set in modern day, and then they'll have like an insert chapter like from a journal. Like there was one chapter from a woman that he married for a while. There was
okay.
one chapter from um, a stowaway on a ship that met him once in their life, in their experiences with that. And you
Okay, so
find
then
out
you're
later
seeing it
as it
from
goes.
different perspectives.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And it's because they don't always know who Anute is, it can sometimes take a little bit for you to realize that's who they're talking about. So that's a fun one. And it all comes down to, in the end, you figure out where all these perspectives were leading you and what the revelation. They just do a masterful job of foreshadowing and bringing up the small details that you're like, why are you bringing this up now? And then later on at the very end, you get that feeling of, oh,
That
this makes
aha
so much.
moment.
They just, yes, they do such a good job of just connecting all of the dots. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it got a little slow. There's a lot of build up, and the climax is very, very fast, which kind of tracks with Keanu Reeves' character with
Yeah.
the movies that he's in anyway. So I mean, yeah, that's fair. I love Keanu Reeves. Don't get me wrong.
But
But that is
it's a
kind of his
trend.
storytelling style. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would definitely suggest, if you're able to find him, reading the Berserker graphic novel series first. Again, Boom Studios is the one that puts out. I found them at my local library, so I know they're fairly accessible. If you can't afford to go out and buy them right away. The Bloodlines one are a little harder to find, but they're not absolutely necessary. Like if you want to read this, just reading the first series of Berserker, and it's BR. Hang on, he spells it funny. Spells it funny. I gotta make sure I get it right so that I don't steer you wrong. No, they're not gonna give it to me in this one, are they? It's BRZKRS, I think. But if you just look up Keanu Reeves,
Hmm.
and like comic book Keanu Reeves, you should be able to find it. It's pretty easy to tell it's him because the character literally looks like him. It's literally based off of him. So, if you
Okay.
just like Keanu Reeves for the way he looks, this is just as rewarding, so long as you can deal with some graphics stuff.
I mean, just from that one description, I was like, ooh. My first thought was like, ooh, yucky.
It's pretty. Yeah, this is a really good argument against people who try to say comics are for kids. Not gonna lie, but very,
Yeah.
very good work. I kind of want to go find more of the other author. I'm not going to try and say his name again because I'm afraid of getting it wrong. Um, just because the way the finishing touches on this was really, really well done, and I'm pretty sure that was this best-selling author, not Reeves.
Makes sense.
So that is my book review for the day, for the week.
All right. Well, that's pretty much it, unless there was anything else you wanted to touch on about brainstorming.
I I think we kind of covered everything. I mean, if you guys think of anything we didn't cover, feel free to comment, shoot us an email. Any other pieces of brainstorming that we didn't think about, we'll be happy to look at it and offer our opinions, whether solicited or not.
Yeah, that's safe to say. That, or, it could
Um,
end up being another topic. You never know.
no, it's book writing encompasses a lot of stuff. So, but speaking of which, For our next episode, we're going to be talking about common misconceptions about being an author.
Yes.
So we'll pick up the book writing arc the episode after that, but next time we're going for something a little different.
Yep. Because there's a lot of misconceptions about what it means to be an author and what we do, and sometimes it is glamorized. And it's not as pretty as it has been led to believe. Some words.
I'm actually going to have to speak on that because I actually just saw something by Elizabeth Wheatley that's going to apply to this, so I'll have to remember to bring that up next time.
Write it down. Jot it down so you don't forget. Write the note now.
I'll send you the reel.
Yeah. I mean, even like just movies, you know, the think secret window. We don't all get to run off to a cabin in a isolated town and write for days. That'd be nice.
Kind of did that.
I mean, you got lucky. Most of us can't do that though.
I did get lucky. I did get lucky, and I had a friend that kind of offered that to me. So that was luck.
Yes,
it was really nice.
I wish I could. Oh my god, just go sit by the beach or in a cabin off in the woods somewhere and just sit by a fire and write for a week straight. Oh my god.
With internet.
Yes, with internet. That'd definitely be required for sure, especially with the writing software I use. Definitely need the internet.
That is fair.
So yeah.
So
we'll talk more about that later.
I guess the last thing is where we can be found, and that's a lot of places.
Yes. So for listening purposes, you can find us on anywhere that pretty much you can listen to podcasts, or you can watch us on YouTube. I think Spotify now has an option that you can watch. And then for the podcast, you could find us on TikTok, Facebook pages. I think there's going to be a Facebook group. Instagram, Bluesky. What else? I'm missing one. TikTok. So yeah. And I believe that is it. We also are going to be having a website that is Writing with Witches. And you can email us at writingwithwitches@gmail.com. If you have any questions or just want to reach out and talk to us, we're there. And we also have
a Discord server.
We do have a Discord server. I almost forgot. We do have a Discord server that you can join in where we could talk about books and reviews and witchy stuff and all that good fun stuff. And then we have our individual things. You can find me pretty much everywhere as Nicole Autumn. Whoa. I forgot my name. Author. It's late. Author Autumn. Nicole Autumn. Jeez Louise. Author Nicole Autumn. Or Nicole Autumn. Author. That combination of words, you will find me. Guaranteed. On TikTok, Bluesky, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And I also have my own Discord server called Autumn's Grove, where I post specifically about the works in progress. Sneak peeks on things that I'm writing. Oh my lord. Things I'm writing. Yeah, my brain is like shutting down. So yeah, and now you can have the floor so I can stop talking.
You can find me almost anywhere with the Leona Urbansky name, except for TikTok, because they decided to suspend my account. I don't know why, and I'm not sure I'm invested enough to try and fix that, honestly. You can also find my book review site. I have a Facebook and a WordPress, which we will link in the description below for you, so that you can just do an easy clickety click to find that. And yeah, so yeah, I'll just Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky. I do have we're both on Goodreads, I believe.
Yes,
So you can
I
find us there
do have
too.
Goodreads. Yes.
So yeah, I think that wraps it up for the night, which is probably a good thing.
Yes, and if we missed anything, everything will be linked down below with all of our stuff. So if my tongue twisters didn't help you find me, it'll be below. So,
That's fair. All right, well,
but yeah.
we'll wish you all a good night and happy
And
writing.
yeah, and we'll see you next time. Bye.